Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Faith Matters, where we talk about our gospel lesson for the day. If you are a regular attendee and participant in our conversations, you'll notice that something's missing, and that would be my lovely wife, who usually sits here between us. Jen has a little bit of a cold this morning, and so she's decided that staying home is the right move to do. And so she's probably watching. So hello, sweetheart.
Hello, Jen. I miss you too.
Let's press into the gospel reading this morning, because I'm really curious what you have to say about it. We're still in Matthew's gospel. We have a couple more weeks of Matthew before we change over again. So this is from Matthew's gospel. Jesus said, "It is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had the 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 5 talents? See, I have made 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, 'Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours.' But his master replied, 'You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.'" You have to love a gospel passage that ends with weeping and gnashing of teeth, right?
Funny, we don't say gnashing in the average, conversation, but it pops up in the Bible.
It does pop up a lot
of
in the
gnashing
Bible,
there.
Yeah.
We call it grinding now, and you grind your
You
teeth.
grind your teeth. That's true. That's
Here,
true.
I'm going to give my phone to you
Okay.
to be the comment
All right.
reader. That's the very first one there.
So Sharon, if you're watching, I've got his phone. You may want to hold off on the lovey-dovey stuff for 30 minutes, okay? They are newlyweds. Hope Jen is okay. Yes, I know she will be. She's just got a cold. Debbie Nicholson, same thing. So 10 o'clock service is going to be a little bit different today, but that's okay. We'll make it work. So what did you hear, my friends? What comforted you? What challenged you? I will tell you, the first thing that occurred to me was, the guy with the 5 talents doubled the master's money. I want to give him my 401k money and see if he can work some magic for me so that I can retire happy and healthy. Kelly comments that this is another one that I get concerned with, how some prosperity gospel types twist. That said, we should always use the time, talent, and treasure we're given to benefit our families and God's purpose in the best possible way. Yeah, you're not wrong. This is one of those ones that can be twisted in a number of different ways.
I don't even know. I mean, we could also not, twisting's a little bit, and I guess what was that Kelly that said that?
Yes.
If twisting presumes that we're taking the gospel reading somewhere where God did not intend. But I will say this gospel passage can be interpreted in quite a few ways, and I mean interpreted, and I think that would be okay with Jesus if that were part of our thinking, our discussion, and our prayerful entry into this story. One of the classic dualistic ways of approaching this is that more conservative theologians will say, basically God is just saying, work hard with what you have, be a good steward, and that the one who receives the 1 talent and buries it is the loser of the story, the sucker and loser. And then, of course, there's the more left-leaning theology that says, have you heard this one, that the one who gets the 1 talent is actually speaking truth to power. We don't have to assume that this man who gives his talents to the people, which are gold, is the same as God. We could think of him actually as a person who gathers where he has not scattered seed, and he is kind of greedy and uses his slaves, and that but we should know this, when we speak truth to power, we will be cast out. We will be like St. Paul, we'll end up in prison. There's that interpretation too. I think it's always optimal to do both ends and to see all those possibilities and to enter into the story in every way possible and see what value we can glean from these various interpretations.
Agreed. And that's where a lot of the commentary is going. Rosalie said she doesn't understand why the conservative is being punished, and she can't believe she's rising to defend the conservative. I love that.
Oh, she sees the 1 talent as the conservative. She sees the 1
talent as the conservative one, right? Because, he sees the master as a scary guy. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't want to incur the master's wrath, so he does what he thinks is going to protect him from the master's wrath, and that doesn't end well for him.
He couldn't think it would go well, though, that when, after what could have been a very, very long time, the master says, the first thing he says to his master is, I knew you were a harsh man.
Yeah, somebody commented,
not a good
idea to begin by insulting the master. Here's a good question. Somebody says, when I was a kid, I couldn't understand how you made more talents. Let's debunk that right now. So a talent doesn't mean in this what we think of as a talent. A talent is a measurement of wealth, okay? It's think of it like a gold bar. That's probably the best analogy. So the master had reduced his wealth to these gold bars, and he gave 5 gold bars to one, he gave 2 gold bars to another, he gave 1 gold bar to the third. So it really is just a means of quantifying wealth, okay? That's what those talents mean. But Jesus being Jesus, there's also the idea that phrase gets used with sort of like a double meaning, right? Because you can interpret this parable to mean ever so much more than money. And in fact, I would argue that it is really designed not to talk about money. Money is just a means of getting us to the deeper purpose. Fear is also a bad thing, and it keeps us from using our talents. Yeah.
Since I'm preaching, I'll confess that I read some exegesis and other theologians' input on this passage. And one thing I had heard but had forgotten was the amount of hyperbole, a talent being what a good wage-earning man or household would make in a whole year or more, it would certainly get people's attention to say that a master hands to a slave 5 talents of gold. It would have caught the ear of every listener or anybody who worked for a wage,
right.
And this was very intentional. I think we're wise to always remember, especially as preachers or people who are trying to make a parish known for spreading the gospel, that there's a place for hyperbole and getting people's attention if you believe that what you're sharing after you get their attention is of constructive value, as it certainly was in this, I think, very interesting parable.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do here. Laura comments, I like this. It doesn't seem to matter to the master how much he gets back, just that you do something with the talent.
Amen.
Yeah, I think that's the deal here, right?
Yeah.
Because the first 2, they doubled the money, but we don't know if this was 1 year or 10 years. We do know that the first 2 found a way to do something with the talents they were given by their master. The last one took that talent and buried it away and never used it at all. There's something there, I suspect, my friends. So is the master a good master or not? That's an interesting question. You could look at it in 2 ways, right? As Chris says, this is a master who entrusted to the slaves very significant amounts of money. Let's just do some quick math, okay? In the zip code we live in here, right around the church, the average income for a household is $80,000 a year. So 5 talents would be about $400,000. So this master just gave $400,000 to a slave and said, I'm leaving, do something good with it. That's pretty startling. I mean, that really, in my mind, that speaks well of the master, that he would have that much faith and be willing to trust that much in it.
And then wander off for a long time.
Right.
How long is that? We don't know, but we know it's long.
Yeah. But then you're right. Then he comes back and the third slave says, well, I know you reap where you didn't sow, and so I was afraid of you. And there's this weird dichotomy there. It's like, well, you're afraid of him, but he was also unbelievably generous in giving the talents out to people. So I think very pointedly, we don't get a firm answer one way or another. It's left to us to determine. All right, back to your comments, because we think we're talking too much. I do not think it has anything to do with money. I think it's multiplying God's gifts to us, says Gary. Yeah.
And the huge majority of theologians agree with Gary.
I would agree with that, yeah. Jenny says, part of faith maybe taking calculated risks in all areas. As an entrepreneur, I get that part. Yeah. And I think that's part of what this is. It's like we're all given gifts. We're all given talents. It may not be money. It may be a talent to do this or a talent to do that. Again, there's that double meaning. God is sitting back wondering and watching, what are we going to do with those talents that we've been given? Kim says she's been told this is biblical and a standard for building a business, especially when it comes to using someone else's money to build personal wealth. Yeah? For us, God gives us the gift of life on earth. We can produce spiritually during that time or fritter away. Yeah, right on, Brian. There's a lot going on in this thing. Hello, Dick Stufflebeam. I got an email from you this morning. Good to see you. The master told the last slave that a bank would at least return something. Do something. Yeah, do something. Although I find it interesting because in the Old Testament, there's actually a prohibition against lending money and earning interest. But in this parable, we have that as part of it. At the very least, you could have done something with the money that would have returned more to me.
Well, not to belabor the speak truth to power interpretation, but what you have just observed is part of that theological proof that this is not a just master. Mm-hmm. He ignores the law of Torah.
Right. Right.
He might have boodles of money, but he's a little bit that guy in Monopoly who smokes the cigar and is a little greedy, actually. One of the other, not to make too much of this hyperbole, back to Jesus's hearers. Mm-hmm. When the guy comes back, he says to the guy who has 5 talents of gold, baskets of gold. It might have been little chunks, but all by weight added up to 5 talents. This massive amount of wealth. He says to the slave, "You've been responsible with a few things." So he's got so much money. Even as he's speaking to his slaves, he's reaffirming how many boodles of cash he has.
I think you're going pretty deep on this particular path, aren't you?
Well, I, as a storyteller,
yep.
I think these details of storytelling are hugely interesting. Mm. And that the average listener would have said, a few things, a slave being given that much money is not a few things.
But there's also, I don't want to be doing point counterpoint, that's not what we're doing here, but I don't want to write off the master that easily, because not only does he give significant investments of talents to these slaves, but that demonstrates a high degree of trust in them.
Absolutely.
But then he said, when they return the money back to him with increase, he says, "Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You've been trustworthy in a few things. I'll put you in charge of much more. Enter into the joy of your master." Now, if God is the master in this story, isn't that what we all want to hear? When we all get to the pearly gates and St. Peter's standing there behind his little podium with the quill pen in his hand, don't we all want to hear, "Well done, good and trustworthy soul, enter into the joy of your master"? Boy, that sounds like a plan to me. Is there anything to the number of talents that are distributed here? Anybody want to weigh in on that? Carol asks, did they know they were going to have to give it back, or did they think it was a gift? No, it was very clear, at least it seems to me to be very clear, that this was to be invested on the master's behalf. In other words, he was putting them in charge of his business affairs.
Clearly, and entrusted his property to them is very different than gave them this gift.
Yeah, exactly.
The first sentence, the first line of the parable is, he summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them.
Mm. If much is given, much is expected in return. What about that phrase, "Don't hide your light under a bushel," right? If you have a gift, you're not called to bury it in the ground, which is what the third slave did. You're called to do something with it.
One of the Zen things about this, when we don't require an ironclad best interpretation of it, but just kind of keep looking at the elements, which I think is a way to read Jesus' parables, is it's an interesting idea that to those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. And it's actually something that for the 10,000 years of recorded human history has been an element, a universal element, east, west, north, south, 5,000 years ago, and today, this idea that those who have get more. Mm-hmm. Because that's how investment works, and it's also how talent works, and hardworking people. In the 8 a.m. service, I referenced Bruno Mars, a reference that's not going to the 10 a.m. sermon. But guys like Bruno Mars, who work hard, work smart, and who have been given huge talents from God, which they also develop to the fullest, are going to always be increasing the goodness they've gotten. It's just a human reality that we should all be contemplating and thinking personally too, what is it in us? What do we have in abundance to which the universe, God, earth and heaven will add to? Because there's probably some desire from God to create abundance of what's good.
Yeah. So why is this parable in the gospel? What did Jesus want the listeners to take from it? What should we take from it in 2020? Now people are texting Bruno Mars song titles.
Ha!
Thanks, Kim.
Man, does he have talent.
Always wondered if God gives us these talents as a test.
That's an interesting question.
That is an interesting question. I don't know whether it's a test, but I know it's a gift, but it's like that trite phrase, it's the gift that's supposed to keep on giving. We're not given the gift for ourselves, we're given it so that we might do something for others, not just ourselves. But those who have more have an obligation to do things with it, not to just create more. Yeah, that becomes a big part of it. I know if you see any of the sports heroes that are out there, whenever they're renegotiating their multi-hundreds of millions of dollar contracts, you typically hear them say, it's not about the money, it's about the respect, which is code for saying it's all about the money. But even they get to a certain point where when you have so much money that your grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren will never have to work a day in their life, then you do find that there's something else that you need to do with those resources. Whether it's money or whether it's talent or whether it's using talent to make the money to then do something else with it. Am I making any sense at all?
That made sense.
Okay.
And back to the interpretation that the master is basically a good man or a God surrogate in this story. All that is entrusted to the slaves goes back to God. The most we ever have in all this resource and blessing is a share. It never becomes personal possession. And I think the best stewards of talent and resource understand that deep connection, including Bruno Mars.
You're not letting that one go, are you?
I've just seen a guy who really loves. And it makes his life happier. I'm sure he's got a nice house and a car too, but he's making it a better world for everybody.
Yeah.
As these slaves did in the story. They improved the master whose trust was rewarded.
Yeah. And Jen reminds us that when we think of these talents, we should think instead of the spiritual gifts God gives to each one of us. What do we do with those gifts? How do we find a way to return those gifts back to God and back to others, really, on God's behalf, and do something with them rather than just hoard them for ourselves? Invest your time wisely, says Brian. Yeah, that's it. It's more blessed to give than to receive. Don't hoard. Yeah, people are getting there. Sounds like stewardship to me, says Marcia.
Amen.
Right on the money.
Yep.
Right on the money.
Rick, I don't know where we are time-wise since both our phones are on the camera.
We got about 4 more minutes.
But before it expires, I just want a quick mention, because it's always amazing how in one avenue you say it 3 times, but then there are people who don't know. If any of you out there don't already know that many of us here at Epiphany and all around the world have decided to fast on Fridays and Saturdays, fasting meaning a lot of different things, and then breaking the fast each Sunday morning, either virtually or at the 8 a.m. in-person service here at Epiphany. And we have a special prayer that we're praying along with, so it's fasting and praying for God to act powerfully in eliminating, reducing COVID, reducing suffering. And so I just want to throw that out there and invite everybody as an opportunity to use their talent of discipline, to do without coffee or chocolate or alcohol or watching MSNBC, CNN, or Fox for 48 hours. But get some skin in the game. Do something that's hard. Walk an extra mile.
Make it sacrificial.
Make it sacrificial. You get more skin in the game, you get more out of it, and earth and heaven benefit the most. Advertising is over.
Yeah, I think people are getting their mind around this.
Oh, lots and lots.
Most people get to the point they want to give away money so their kids get the experience of developing their own talents. Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of work here at the parish with our stewardship programs, and that includes something we call legacy giving, legacy stewardship, which means leaving to the church out of your will or your trust, your estate after you die, because we are all going to die, brothers and sisters. Hate to break that to you.
I already have.
But Chris did it once, and
nothing to it.
And he lived to tell about it. That's another story. But the folks who get to that point, they're really in that. They understand that it's not about leaving my kids untold hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, because they need to have the same experience I had. I want to leave them enough that they're comfortable, but then I want to give away money. I want to give money to the church. I want to give money to the homeless. I want to give money to this social service agency. I want to give money to my alma mater. Give becomes their mantra. And one of the things I've noticed about the people who are in that boat, they are the happiest people
Amen.
I encounter.
Absolutely true.
They really, truly are.
Rick, hold me to this, and parishioners, please hold me to this too. One of the things I've been doing in the, whatever it is now, 14 months I've worked here, said, I'm going to make that template where we actually have the funeral plan, where we choose hymns for our own funeral, who would be pallbearers, all these things, and including gifts to the church. There are great templates for this out there, and I've been telling myself for 14 months, in 2021, I am going to somehow find the minutes and hours to do this with intention, because it does create joy.
You don't have to do it in 2021, because I did it in 2020. We have it.
Oh, great.
It's all done.
We should talk sometime.
We should talk once in a while, you know?
Oh, great. I bet you did a great template, too.
It works, and it is a good thing.
Oh, good to know. All right, so you can call me earlier.
If we screwed up this time, do we get a redo? And there goes Brian wanting to take us on reincarnation. And oh, look at the time, my friends.
Brian, the answer's still yes. 100%, 111%, brother. You just keep doing it. God loves us that much.
I love it. Brothers and sisters, thank you for your biblical erudition, as always. I saw some names that I hadn't seen before, so let me just insert a very quick programming update for you. When we conclude this, which we will do in about a minute, we will be getting ready for our 10 o'clock live stream service, which will be a Eucharist service with music that you can watch here on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. After that service, we will have our virtual coffee hour, where we'll just get an opportunity to chat with one another virtually like we're doing here, and just have a little fellowship time. And then tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and every 9 a.m., Monday through Saturday, we will have a live stream message done by one of the members of the clergy here at Epiphany that will hopefully give you something to ponder and uplift you during the day. Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock, we have our Supper Song and Praise COVID edition. Thursday evenings, we have Centering Prayer. There is a lot going on at this parish, brothers and sisters, and so we hope you partake of some of it. That's all we have time for. Thank you. God bless you, and we'll see you in half an hour.